Justice Department going under Merrick Garland? I will tell you, it's the job I think I would least like to have in the whole federal government right now. Like, if you could give me my pick of jobs in the Biden administration, my first choice would be, I don't want the job. My last choice would be, I want to be the Attorney General coming in to clean up the Justice Department after what just happened there under the previous president. I mean, being Attorney General after Trump, that's a job for which you'd need a hazmat suit several days of the week every time you come to work, in terms of the proverbial smoking toxic wreckage of the Justice Department left behind by the previous president and the previous Attorney General, William Barr. I mean, not even in the worst of Watergate did we see such a blatant record of the U.S. Justice Department upending independent law enforcement to instead do favors for the president's friends. I mean, Trump appointees and his attorney general literally intervened at the sentencing phase of cases against Trump's friends to get them off the hook after they had been convicted or pled guilty. They waltzed in at the sentencing phase to say, no, we got to clean this up. These guys can't actually get in trouble. They're the president's friends. I mean, if you're Merrick Garland taking over the Justice Department after they just spent, all that time doing that, how do you clean that up? You can't just let it slide that the Justice Department was used that way. You can't just let it go, or it becomes precedent that the Justice Department can be used that way, that future Justice Departments will do that sort of thing again for criminal friends of some other corrupt future president. Right? You can't just let that slide if the Justice Department has been used for corrupt purposes to help the president's friends. You can't leave that standing as a precedent. That has to be addressed. That has to be redressed. But that's just the start of it. 2 federal judges already have ruled that the Justice Department under Donald Trump and Trump's Attorney General, William Barr, lied to the public and to the court about President Trump's own potential criminal culpability in office. Just last month, the federal judge ruled that Justice Department lawyers under Trump and Justice Department officials under Trump had lied to the court about the consideration of federal criminal charges against Trump while he was in office. That judge ordered the Justice Department to release a memo that they'd try to keep secret in the Trump years about potential criminal charges against President Trump. How did Merrick Garland choose to deal with that misbehavior by the Trump Justice Department, by officials and lawyers in the Justice Department under Trump? How did he decide to deal with it? He decided he would fight the judge's order and would try to keep that memo about potential charges against Trump. He'd try to keep that secret, too, just like William Barr did during the Trump years. Even more recently than that, just in the past week, we've learned disturbing details about Justice Department officials during the Trump administration entertaining demands from the Trump White House that they should start investigations into Trump's weird pet causes, including some of the kookiest, most bananas conspiracy theories about the 2020 election somehow being stolen from Trump. The New York Times reporting that Trump's White House chief of staff, Mark Meadows, told the attorney general while Trump was still in office that after the election that there was a theory he'd heard about on YouTube involving Italy and satellites and a supposed devious plot by a rogue Italian general to change U.S. votes from Italy using the satellite machines. This was a theory that made absolutely no sense. In December, the White House chief of staff directed the Attorney General of the United States that he needed to have the FBI, the actual FBI, meet with the YouTubers who were promoting this particular deep-fried kettle of Trump election fraud fantasy Fruit Loops about Italy and the satellites. It literally made no sense, but the White House chief of staff told the Attorney General, you need to have the FBI meet with the YouTubers about this and investigate it formally as the U.S. Justice Department. Now, that kind of communication from the White House to the Justice Department, that is a very stark, very obvious violation of long-standing Justice Department policy. I mean, for Justice Department officials to be even having that kind of a conversation with the White House chief of staff at all, let alone entertaining multiple requests for him to open these investigations, that is a serious violation of seriously important Justice Department policies. Now, it is being investigated in the Senate The Judiciary Committee under Senator Dick Durbin is reportedly investigating what went wrong there inside the Trump Justice Department, that they were involved in this kind of stuff and fielding these requests, which they never should have been fielding. But under Merrick Garland in the Justice Department itself, apparently they're not investigating this. Apparently they're just letting that slide, not looking into it. Just, I guess, planning to do better and not make those same mistakes again. Hope that the Trump-era behavior that happened inside the Justice Department, just hope that it gets forgotten and doesn't get cited as precedent by some future corrupt president in terms of how he expects his Justice Department to act on his behalf? Apparently. And even more recently than that, late last night, the Justice Department under Merrick Garland told a court that the Justice Department is now going to continue the position of the Trump-era Justice Department in the stomach-churning case of E. Jean Carroll. Ms. Carroll, you'll recall, is a very high-profile case. She accused former President Trump of rape. He responded by insulting her and calling her a liar. In response to that, she sued him for defamation in his personal capacity as a private citizen. The allegation was about an alleged rape, which happened, she says, happened many years before he was president. The defamation case was him defaming her, allegedly defaming her, in response to her making those allegations. Well, last fall in September, there was this sort of shocking move made by Attorney General William Barr when he asked if the court would remove Trump as the defendant in that case and substitute in the United States government to be the defendant instead. Barr said when Trump basically made these public claims that E. Jean Carroll was a liar and he couldn't have raped her because he doesn't like the look of her, William Barr went to the court and said that statement from Donald Trump was him carrying out the official duties of the presidency of the United States. And therefore, the government will defend this case. He's effectively immunized. It was a shocking thing, right, to say that this was an official act by the president. But the point of that act by William Barr was to immunize Trump and also to make her case go away. Legally, the U.S. government can't be sued for defamation. And so if Barr succeeded in this shocking ploy, if he was able to get the government itself swapped in to be the defendant instead of Trump, well, the government can't be sued for defamation. That would result in her case dying instantly. Right? It was just a really shocking move by William Barr when he did that last fall. Late last night, Merrick Garland and the Biden Justice Department said they're sticking with it. They're sticking with that position. Oh, but wait, there's more. We've also learned this week about Bill Barr and the Trump Justice Department going after reporters to try to get their sources. All of these reporters had written stories way back in 2017 that in their own ways were critical of Trump and the Trump administration. Years later, in the last days of the Trump administration, during 2020, William Barr apparently approved subpoenas to try to find out those reporters' sources for those stories. And under William Barr, they demanded these documents and records to try to find out reporters' sources. They did it in secret without notifying the news organizations of what it was they were looking for. And again, that sort of action, taking it in secret, not notifying the news organizations as to what they were after, that would seem to be a very clear violation of Justice Department policy, as former Attorney General Eric Holder explained to us here last night in our interview with him. What did Merrick Garland do in response to the revelations of that misbehavior by Justice Department official when it came to seeking reporters' sources? What did he do? Well, at least for a while during the Biden administration, the Justice Department kept doing it, kept seeking the reporters' records and not telling the news organizations what they were doing, at least for a while, at least until it started to come out. Come on. I mean, I get the poetic justice of putting Judge Merrick Garland in this really big, prestigious job after he was so mistreated by the Republicans in the Senate, after he didn't get that Supreme Court seat. I get it. I get the good karma or whatever there. But at the Justice Department, which he's running, there is a challenge unlike any other in government right now, which is to clean house at that department with its awesome power and its massive resources to clean house and clean up and find the depths of the bad behavior and misconduct by officials at that agency, after the previous president really did use federal law enforcement. He really did use the U.S. Justice Department to lawlessly go after his enemies and reward his friends. Under Donald Trump, the U.S. Justice Department was corrupted in multiple cases. Trump didn't just want to do that. He didn't just express a desire to do it. Under Bill Barr, he did it because there were Justice Department officials who did it, who went along, who took the calls, who took the instructions, who quashed the stuff that the White House wanted lawlessly quashed, who forced the stuff that they wanted lawlessly forced. That can't stand as precedent. The U.S. Justice Department is too important. Its credibility is too irreplaceable. That misbehavior during the Trump era at the U.S. Justice Department has to be cleaned up, has to be found out, ferreted out, punished, cleaned up, and come clean to the American people about it. Or the Justice Department will be used that way again by the next corrupt president who sees what happened under Bill Barr and the former guy as a legacy of corruption you can build on. And trust me, it will happen. The job of cleaning up a corrupted U.S. Justice Department is a terrible one. And a really hard one. But it is a necessity for all the obvious reasons. You can't just wish that stuff didn't happen and agree that under your leadership it won't happen again. It's a terrible job, a really hard job, but it must be done. You can't leave that stuff unpunished because it becomes precedent. And we knew that job would be hard no matter who President Biden picked to be his attorney general. But I'm not sure we knew to expect that some of the worst stuff from the Trump-era Justice Department, from the Bill Barr-era Justice Department, not only wouldn't be corrected in terms of accountability, it would be continued under the new leadership, under the Biden administration. We knew it had to be cleaned up. We hoped that it would be cleaned up. I don't think anybody expected it would be continued.